trying to get that cross-functional thing working. And how I'm going to start the conversation is that there was a survey recently, and what they were doing was they were trying to see what did PMs think their role was and what did UX researchers think their role was. And there was about 80% overlap between what researchers thought they were responsible for and what PMs thought they were responsible for. So with that as a kind of a starting point, I'd love to hear, and maybe we'll start with Ananda. What is your kind of team structure, and how do researchers and product managers, how do they work together?
Okay, so I think research team is really kind of unique because we mostly in the first stage we act like as consultants. So because the numbers of our members is not much at that time, we cannot separate us the responsibility of us and embedded them into like a specific product line. For example, in Tokopedia as an e-commerce platform, we have many squads, right? Those who handle logistics, those who handle promo, those who handle home and search, those who handle, flights, etc. And we don't really have much researchers at that time, so we work together in the team. So every request that is coming in, we try to divide them based on the availability of the researchers itself. But as the team grow, now we are assigned into the tribes or maybe the specific product. However, we also still have the responsibility for conducting research that is foundational, which means that it is mandatory. So if there is any request from the tribe that is oncoming, we have to argue with them that we think maybe we really have to focus on the time between the ad hoc projects and also the foundational projects, because foundational projects is a project that is already agreed upon, singular leaders, which means it is already agreed by the research leaders, product manager leaders, design leaders, so that that's why it should be done. And as for the ad hoc, it will be something that is more discussable between the researcher and also the direct stakeholders. In this case, it can include a product manager also. I think the interesting thing about research here is that because we are assigned in several tribes, we have like this kind of specialty in conducting research that is related to the tribe or maybe the team that we are assigned in. But we can also explore many things, because if we are assigned in the foundational projects, it usually not depending on our tribe. So for example, I am put in the category tribes, so every research related category will be upon me, but I got like this very abstract research, foundational research one regarding the impulsive buying, in which I have to find out what makes people shop impulsively, and it is done by me, and it is not really related to any category at all. So I think that's the unique thing. And we, as researchers, also really work very closely, especially with the product and product design team, mostly with the product manager lead, and also the VP of the product itself, while also trying to know about what the implication from the data of the PM team to the product design team, because we want to see the implementations as well. So we stand in between them, okay, and we try to communicate things with each other.
Great. And I guess, Maurice, what's your structure like where you work?
In our company, it's the product managers who usually do all of the discovery work. And by discovery work, that usually includes the research part as well. So you do the user interviews, you do FGDs if time allows. So, we are thinking of hiring people for UX. It's really mostly the product management team doing the discovery part. That's why I was smiling when you mentioned that when you were talking about the overlap.
Excellent. So yeah, just back to Ananda, you were saying, and I thought it was a really interesting point there about you've got some people like have their foundational projects and then they get the requests coming in. And you mentioned in your maturity that sometimes people are getting assigned to teams. So how many designers are you now? How many teams roughly would have an embedded researcher versus that kind of ad hoc kind of stepping in when needed?
I guess we have like this kind of OKR in which we aim to like finish certain numbers of foundational projects in a quarter, and it really depends on the availability of the researchers. So maybe of all like 20 researchers, maybe 10 will be divided in half-half. For example, they will be the one who is handling a foundational, but also can focus on the urgent research requests from their team. But as you say, not all researchers is assigned to the foundational projects, because we know that foundational projects requires more time, and it also requires somewhat seniority and also expertise in it, because it's very abstract. So basically, it is usually led by more senior researchers, which is trying to, give the opportunity for more junior researchers to chip in also. But yeah, I think why we don't really assign all of the team members into conducting foundational research it is probably more because the information gap and also the skill gap. So in order to make more people in the future conduct the foundational research, we pair the senior and the junior researchers together in the project.
Great, yeah, and you mentioned actually that kind of skill gap and that training piece. Do you also is your pairing just within the research team, or do you also train and pair with people in product teams so that they can do their own research if they need to?
As for that kind of training, it is actually done by any researcher can do that kind of training. So usually there are senior researchers who will be responsible in creating the guideline, and then the more junior researchers will be the one who will communicate it to the stakeholders, and also will demonstrate the materials and how to conduct the research by their own to the stakeholders. So I think it's more like a teamwork between the internal research team, in which everyone is responsible in educating the stakeholders, and it is a really something that is kind of mandatory, because we have like this kind of project which is called consulted project, in which the researchers, regardless of the seniority, act as someone who oversees the research that is done by the stakeholders from end to end. So the end result is not created by the researcher but by the stakeholders. And in order for stakeholders to do so, research team has to oversee their work and give them feedback regarding that matter. And we also iterate on how they conduct it. Yeah, I think that's probably the answer to it.
Excellent. So there's quite a structured kind of process flow there.
Yeah.
And Marisa, on your end, so if the product manager is responsible for doing all this research, as well as kind of putting together the roadmap, as well as the stakeholder communication, how do you help, or is there a structured process for kind of training and upskilling product managers?
We have different avenues for training. We have what we call Think Quipper, it's Friday. So for on Fridays, we don't have any meetings, and we really allocate that time to training. So if a product manager wants to learn more about data analytics, for example, or UX research, for example, he or she could just include that in the list of training list of training sessions that we're tracking. Then at the end of the quarter, we usually review like how each of the person is doing in terms of the training that they're taking. So I think that part really helps. Although since we don't really have like a UX researcher like Ananda, it would also help to get someone, right, who could share their expertise on the matter. So,
and do you have those kind of, some people call them communities of practice or internal knowledge sharing communities within the company?
we're actually starting something called Quipper Product Academy, because we have our own LMS, right? And through our LMS, we're planning to deliver, like, for example, I'm a PM. I could create a course related to something that I'd like to share with the rest of the team, and then we're gonna deliver it through the LMS. And it's such a I felt like it was such a nice idea, because you get some element of dog fooding there. Then you also get the chance to share what you've learned with the rest of the team. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, that's a great approach. I've heard of a few places kind of trying that kind of just general knowledge sharing. And I guess just staying on the topic of knowledge sharing, I'll go back to you, and on this one. You mentioned that you're doing a huge amount of research, but how do you get that research out to people? How do you make it so that when teams are going and looking at building products, that they know, A, that it exists, and B, where to go to find it?
Okay, so the research team has done a lot of initiatives in order to increase our exposure within the company. So as I said in my presentation, we even held like this kind of offline events in which we try to make it fun. We try to make an exhibition, and we, when we conducted this before pandemic, we go from floor to floor to give them like, the heads up of the event that we are going to showcase, and everybody can attend the event, and there will be free food, there will be free games. So we try to make it fun, because we believe that when they know that research is not all about the data, it's not all about answering hypotheses, but also empathizing with people, it will make them feel that it is more relatable for them to know, right? And we try to make several initiatives from the formal one until the informal one, since we know that maybe not all will be interested if we try to make things really formal, and some people really likes it when we chip in into the informal gatherings. For example, we have like this product design town hall, and we also try to share some findings there, so that people, if they want to know more about the ongoing research, they can really ask us.
And is there any self-service options for people, or does it rely very much on you kind of pushing out your content to people?
No, it really depends on the context. Sometimes people ask us to collaborate. For example, the product design team want to hold a town hall, or the product managers want to hold a town hall, and they approach the researchers and say, hey, do you have any things that is worth sharing, because I heard that you are researching regarding this product and we don't really have the data. So can you tell a story in our town hall, so that people can relate on what we are working together for, so that we can actually chip in and influence them through a very indirect manner. We don't really talk about the research report. We talk about how it can fit their agenda. In that example, we want to tell them a story of how things goes, and if they are interested, they can also request us to do something like this in the future. Or maybe if they want to know about the findings, they can really reach out to the researchers who is responsible in conducting that research. And maybe if there are many more opportunities in the future, they can really chip in together. For example, when I told people regarding my research, several designers, several business people invite me for ideation session. So from there, they are inspired to create solutioning together, so that we can really get a grasp on what the feedback means to us, and how it can really develops into solution that will solve users' problem.
Great, nice structure there and approach. Maurice, so when it's more, I guess, decentralized, so you're doing your own research in your teams, how is there a risk that you might be doing something that another team has already done? And how do you share between teams to make sure that you're not repeating the same kind of research?
actually something that we're trying to be better at, because right now each PM goes on his own and then tries to do research for the current feature or initiative that he's working on. So one thing that we've been trying to do is to have a central document where we could access each and everyone's findings. So we're hoping that from there, like, it's a step towards sharing what the other PMs are also finding in terms of the discovery work that they're doing.
Yeah, it's a very difficult challenge because I've tried it and it becomes a product in its own right.
Right,
Because
right.
you need to be thinking about the users, how they're going to use it, what's the update, the data kind of life cycle. It
Right,
becomes quite
right.
challenging. One of the things that I guess both of your talks are very much around kind of coming up with ideas, setting either the roadmap or setting your foundational research goals. A very hot topic in the industry at the moment is OKRs and cascading OKRs. So, what is your view? And maybe we'll start this time with Maurice. Do you have a concept in your organization of cascading where the CEO sets some OKRs and then the next team down and the next team down? Or do you translate kind of objectives into something that's relevant for your teams?
What we do is we translate it to what's relevant to our team. So we're actually split into different feature squads. So each feature squad has its own KPIs, and all of those KPIs are supposed to support whatever the business goals are. So whatever the metrics the business thinks they should track for the business to be successful. So you have the business goals, then you have the product goals, and then you have the specific goals and KPIs for each feature squads.
And who's responsible for setting or doing that translation piece?
Yeah, usually the PM works with the EMs and the entire team in his feature squad. And then it's reviewed by like the senior PMs, like review whether the KPIs that were set by the feature squads actually align with whatever the goals are of the company.
Okay, and so just a question. Do you have a separation there between a feature squad and a product kind of team? Is one product manager responsible over multiple feature squads?
Right. So in my case, I handle the B2C part. So it's called Quipper Video Masterclass, and I have feature squads. I'm overseeing different feature squads with individual product managers.
Okay, so each feature squad has its own product manager, but you're overseeing a number of different feature squads.
That's right. So I have my KPIs, and each of the feature squads also have KPIs that should support my KPIs. And then my KPIs should support the business goals.
Right. And I guess one question just on that kind of structure. Your starting point was that everything should have a vision, and from the vision you move on. So is the product manager in each feature squad, are they creating their own visions for their particular kind of subsection, or is there one vision at your level and that kind of is what the other teams adopt?
How we do it now is there's one vision. So for example, for Quipper Video Masterclass, there's one vision for that product. And then your feature squads just has to make sure that they're tracking that the right metrics to support that specific vision.
Okay, great. So just that was kind of an interesting take. But if we jump over to Ananda, how does the cascading of objectives? Because you've mentioned that you have very set objectives within the research team on particular foundational research things that you need to do. So where did those objectives come from, and how do you marry up with? I'm assuming the product teams have their objectives, and how do you negotiate that?
I think as for the OKR itself, it also evolves with the maturity of the team. For example, when we first started, we actually want to count on how much projects that we have done that year, right? Because we want to showcase whether we are able to help like a certain numbers of projects. But as we grow, it's not only about the number of projects itself. It's more about whether our insights is implemented or not. And it can be something that is concrete or something that is more subtle. For example, the concrete implementation would be the life of the design that has been live, and also like the education page that has been showcased to like sellers or maybe buyers, and also the new business model that also has been launched or maybe applied. So it is more something that is concrete and really implemented in terms of impact. But the more subtle one is the one that we also aim to go after, because we believe in the future that the objective of the research team is not only helping people to get to where they want to be, but also to forecast on where they should be going based on the opportunities that is available for them to go after, right? So now we are also focusing on whether we can influence the making of the PRD, for example, product requirement documents, product vision documents, because within the company, we have like the vision of that year, what kind of priorities that we want to put on first. And if there is insights from the research team, the document that is consumed there or maybe showcased there in the VP presentation or maybe in the presentation to the higher ups, we also count that as an impact, because it means that our abstraction from the findings, be it foundational or maybe directional, it is used for making a bigger plan than the research itself. For example, when we conducted foundational research, we want to uncover certain things regarding a topic. But at the end of the day, the topic is used in many areas. It can be used by one team, two teams, three teams all together, and it can lead to multiple implementations that may differ from one to another. So yeah, I think the more we want to delve into impact, the more the more varied it is as for the impact, because now we are also like trying to formulate better understanding regarding our impact. But so far, I think it is mostly are divided between the concrete impact and also the strategic impact, like I said before. But we are still working on that.
And one of the challenges that I've seen with when you were mentioning there the concrete examples, often what research finds is a little bit subtle. Like, so somebody might go in with an idea and research will tell them, well, actually, it needs to be a little bit different to what your original thought was. But as soon as you mention it, the person believes it was their idea. So it's really hard they were like, oh no, but that's what I meant. But if you hadn't done the research, they would have gone down the different route. So how do you track the ones where, no, we did influence, this was the original starting point, this is where we are now, we have influenced that, versus when people will say, and I don't think they're doing it out of a bad place, but just that's what they believe, that, oh no, that's what I meant all along.
Okay. So I think in order to set expectations between who done this, right, it's more about whether this is the idea from researchers or the ideas from the designers or the stakeholders, right? The ownership of the impact, right? So in my team, after we conducted research, we try to document all of the recommendations based on the user gaps that we identify. For example, users have difficulties in this and they expect this. Users have this pain point so that they would prefer to do this. And we try to cram it up in a document that we can follow up over time. So we have like this schedule in which we have to follow up the implementation of the insights. It can be 1 month from the research, and also we follow it up again 3 months after the research, so that we can have like the documentations regarding the points that we provide them, so that they cannot really try to change what we have written since we already conduct this at first and they have known about that. So if you talk about ownership, I think the most problematic thing is basically people don't document what they are saying, right? It makes people really hard to be believed by others if they don't really have justification that is good enough for people to believe them. But by writing down the points that we want to track, by pointing down where these ideas come from, for example, it comes from the user survey, it comes from the internal data, it comes from the interview, it comes from the usability testing, we can know where this originates from. Or maybe if it can be more flexible than that. For example, the design team already has like this kind of hypothesis, and it is strengthened by the result from the usability testing and also the survey. So why not we try to own this together, right? Because the design team has their own justification. For example, they know that from the metrics that the design doesn't really perform well. But from the research team, we also have like this kind of anecdotes. We have this like kind of percentage that showcases that the reason for users for not using that kind of feature is like this. So I think the ownership of the ideas can be really clear, and it is possible for us to even divide the ideas so that we can win together in that matter. It doesn't, I think within my team, we always emphasize that it's not about who wins. It's more about whether we can do this together and whether we can be stronger when we work together.
Yeah, no, that's a great ending point. It's kind of the whole company wins or loses rather than the individual. So Maurice, do you have a similar issue? I've talked to a lot of product managers and they say they never get the time to do the research. They're just constantly, it's all about implementation. So is there anything that you use to validate and kind of say, look, this is valuable. This is why we need to do that upfront discovery?
I didn't get the last part. Your voice went off there.
Sorry, I was saying, what is there anything that you do to justify why you should spend time doing discovery? When a lot of people are often, oh, just build it, just build it.
Yeah, that's also a common problem, I think, for product managers, because you should especially when you're if you're not in a team-driven roadmap building culture, right? If it's a top-down arrangement, what usually happens is there's one person who tells you about what he thinks a user needs, like a feature that the user needs. And then as a product manager, what you end up doing is you just translate those into specs. And then you just make sure that you deliver it. But if you think about like best practices in product management, right? Discovery is really important because the idea of that person could actually be something that the users didn't actually need. So if ever you do not do the discovery work needed, then you're going to end up spending a lot of time building it. You're going to need to build designs for it. You're going to need to coordinate with the engineers. And then you end up shipping something that the users actually didn't want. So it's how the best way to stress the importance of the discovery is to explain that to the people who don't think discovery is important as well. And if there are like concrete examples that you could give, then I think it would also help them realize the importance of discovery work.
Excellent. I like that approach as well. We probably down to our last question, and unfortunately Rahel couldn't join us today, but her talk was all about failures and what she's learned from them. So I was wondering, and I'm putting you on the spot now, but Ananda, if I start with you, is there anything that you've done where you kind of thought, okay, look, I made some mistakes, but that was a great learning opportunity because now I know not to do that again. And do you have anything to share with the audience that might be useful for them?
Mm. Okay, I think my failure, I have made a mistakes when it comes to like blastings. Really, we have like this kind of budget for the foundational research, and we have already gotten so many participants for this one. But turns out it's not valid because the logic that I made which has been approved by my leader, is actually not. Making the users can access certain key questions. Therefore, we have like, I don't know, thousands of participants and we cannot use the data. And we already spent money for that and it's really fatal. So I think it really became a drawback because it means that if we want to resource again, we have to spend more time and we have to spend more money, and we also have to tell stakeholders that this is not going to be delivered on time, right? But had I done had I didn't do that mistakes, I won't be where I am now, because from that time I learned more about better planning. So what I do to solve that is actually, unfortunately I requested more budgets than I actually used, so it really works. And I always say this to the other researchers, especially junior researchers. Maybe you really have to create several plans, and you have to be flexible for that, since there will be times when things will not go according to our plan, and you also have to navigate your mistakes into improving the situation, because people rely on you. Because in that matter, I am the lead researcher and I am taking the sole responsibility of the waste of the participants and the money that we have spent. So yeah, it has taken a toll of me, but I think what can really support you during this crisis is having people who believes in you, and people who can really stand up for you even when you do your mistakes, so that you will have the courage to begin again. And I am thanking my friends and also my leaders who try to make me become responsible, but not in the way that makes me feel down or incapable, but in the way that makes me feel like this is something that I should own, and I should figure this out on how to tackle this matter, because it's my responsibility and there's nothing to afraid of.
Yeah. No, that's a great example. I've done a few of those myself in my career, so it's always quite you take it. It hurts so much that you'll never do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Maurice, do you have an example of something where you've messed up in the past, but that has made you a better product manager today?
Yeah, there were a lot, but I'll just focus on one. So there was this time when we were migrating to a new platform. And of course, since it's a migration, right, like your main worry is, will we be able to migrate all of the data correctly? So I was so focused on that part that I didn't do any user interviews. So, but fortunately, we did have some alpha and beta testing. So we were able to course correct early on, right, before we released the product. But if we didn't have the alpha and beta tests, I would have shipped something that the users would not be happy about, because it actually didn't align with what they had in mind. So from what I learned from that is, it's really important. User interviews is really important, especially if you could do it in the beginning, so you could also consider it as you're planning how the product that you're building would look like.
Great. Now, thank you very much for sharing all of your insights, not just the failures and your learnings, but also about how you're structured, how you share knowledge internally, and what the roles of PM and UX are. So that is all we have time for. But I really enjoyed the conversation. And if you have any other questions out there, please do share them on Slack, and Ananda and Maurice will be happy to answer them. So thank you, Ananda, and thank you, Maurice.
Thank you also, Rory and Maurice.